Hello again, you sick, twisted weather freaks, and welcome to another fun-filled, action-packed, and intellectually stimulating edition of This Week in Weather. I'm your host and meteorologist, DT, the commander of chaos, the colonel of confusion, and your captain of catastrophe. Let's talk about this week in weather. First, before we get to that, let me just say briefly that I'm having problems again with Facebook in terms of what they're doing with my Facebook page. Because I have such a huge following, over 300,000 likes and a reach of over 2 million, they are constantly imposing, for some reason that I don't know why, these profile checks. I have to prove my identity, and that can take a while. So I'm not sure why Facebook is deciding to screw around here with my Facebook page, but hopefully we'll get it resolved within the next few days. I'm hoping. I don't know. These guys, everybody has to rely on them with social media, and it becomes a real problem. So what can I tell you? Anyway, let's get on to the weather. Hopefully, get this problem solved. And on this edition here on November 18th, going into the 19th, let me just remind you that this here is the website, and you can see that you have lots of different products. If you're in snow removal, for example, we have a lot of different weather forecast products for people that do snow. But also, don't forget that you have the newsletter. It's only $5 for the next 3 weeks. And almost all the following events we're about to talk about, on the newsletter, I've been talking about since the beginning of November. So there is that. So it is a pretty good product for only $5 a month. All right. This here is the current upper air map, right? Good. And we can see some important features here. Obviously, there's a big trough here right in the middle portion of the country. That's the blue shaded area extending from Manitoba down towards Kansas. And we have a weak ridge on the west coast, a moderately strong ridge on the east coast, which is why it's been so warm the last couple of days. Very typical, ordinary looking November pattern, but that's going to undergo a significant change. Now, this here is the cold front, which is pushing its way through already. It's probably pushed on through eastern Virginia and then New Jersey and the Delmarva into central North Carolina. But notice here that this is taken as of 7 p.m. You can see temperatures 65 to 70 degrees in much of eastern Virginia, North Carolina, central North Carolina. You have a low to mid 60s in the Delmarva, New Jersey, and up towards New York City. But as soon as you go behind the front, look how cold it is in Ohio and eastern Kentucky and West Virginia. Even in southwest Virginia, it's already down to 37 degrees as of 7 o'clock. So there's quite a bit of cold air behind this front. Now, obviously, the big concern is what's going to happen here early next week. Next week is a Thanksgiving weekend, but this storm is going to hit this next one on the 21st and the 22nd, which is a few days before Thanksgiving, so it should not be that much of a travel problem. But this is what we're looking at here. Now, this has been showing up here for several days. We've talked about it on the Facebook page, we've talked about it on the Twitter page. This initially by the European model is forecast to be a big storm, early season winter snowstorm, which would impact Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, Pennsylvania with significant snow and rain for New Jersey, New York City, and New England. Now, that's not going to happen for a number of different reasons. We'll get into that. It's a little early in the season for these big major troughs coming out of Canada to drop into the Great Lakes and drop all the way as far south as Virginia without a huge amount of blocking in the jet stream over eastern Canada. Now, we are going to have a lot of blocking, but it's not going to be quite that much. At any rate, so there's the trough here. You can see it now. This is as of Sunday night, pushing in from Manitoba and rapidly amplifying across the Great Lakes down towards Alabama. Notice on the west coast here we have this big ridge which is pushing up towards Alaska. So this ridge is pushing up, which is allowing the trough to drop further south. Now you see the thick black line I drew in there right underneath or to the side of where I wrote the word trough. That is the trough axis or the alignment. And you can see that it's running in a northwest to southeast orientation. So that is a negatively tilted trough. And when you see that with blocking in Greenland, you almost always get a big storm on the East Coast in some capacity. Now, there are several other factors besides that, but that's often a very good thing to look for, in terms of the jet stream patterns, 500 millibars, 200 millibars, when you want to see whether or not there's going to be a storm on the East Coast. Now, this is what the European model does with it. And I have to give credit. The GFS model is doing a very good job with this. Usually we see these huge dichotomies. But so far the GFS is doing really good with this system as well. But you can see the trough here amplifies and pushes to the east coast. Now, it does not develop a closed upper low. And that's one of the things that was different earlier in the week. When this system looked like it was going to produce enough cold air to produce snow in the mountains, there was a closed upper low that was forming over Pennsylvania. That of course would keep the coastal storm closer to the coast, the moisture getting pulled inland into the cold air into the mountains, and you'd get your early season November snow. That does not happen now. The trough is deep, it's powerful, but it keeps moving. It does not close off, not at this point. Now, maybe that'll change in the next model runs, but right now it doesn't do that. The other thing is, look at the ridge on the west coast. If you remember, this ridge was much stronger here. Look what happens to the ridge. It gets flattened. Why? Because the next system is coming in from the Pacific towards the west coast already. So it kind of flattens the ridge here a little bit, and that hurts this ability of the trough on the east coast to close off. So that's the one thing. And of course, we see the beginnings of the blocking pattern in eastern Canada here. Notice the upper low south of Greenland. So this upper low is going to cause, and this trough on the east coast is going to cause this ridge to become a monster block. So that's what's going to happen. We can see that in a little bit. Now this here is the surface map. This is the GFS, valid for Sunday. There's our big 1040 cold high. I don't know if we call it Arctic. It's semi-Arctic. I mean, it's very cold for November. Definitely polar, but in any event. So there's the cold front pushing through the Great Lakes and the East Coast. The rain's beginning to develop. Oops, jumped a couple sled here. And now on Sunday, it's actually on the East Coast, Mid-Atlantic. It's going to be pretty nice early, and then the clouds will increase as the front approaches. And we'll get southwest winds again, boosting temperatures up to around into the 50s and 60s. Now this here is the European model. This came out. This is the 12Z run on this Thursday. There's the front pushing through Monday morning. A lot of heavy rain, maybe even some thunderstorms, especially in the Mid-Atlantic area, eastern New England. There's the big low east of the Great Lakes. You can see very, very heavy lake effect snows, howling north winds across all of the central and eastern Great Lakes into the snow belts. So that's going to be a big thing here for this system. And there's the cold high over Kansas. So you look at a lot of wind here behind this system. Now, the GFS for 12Z run, you can see what it's doing here. There's the notice where the low is. First of all, it's a little further south. You see it's over Lake Huron. The European has it northeast of Lake Huron. That's one difference. And the winds are a little stronger further to the south on the GFS. So there's the front coming through early Monday morning. And now the GFS moves it off the coast by Monday evening, where a second low forms off the coast. Now that was the low that some of the models had forming over South Carolina and becoming a second coastal storm, pulling in the cold air and producing early season snow. But as you can see, it is much further to the east. So that's why that doesn't happen. But we do have these howling north winds. Look at these winds coming down from all the way from central Quebec, Canada, right down from across the Great Lakes, right through Buffalo, all the way down to Pittsburgh and Ohio and Virginia and Maryland, North Carolina, Georgia, South Carolina, Tennessee. It's going to be a windy, cold day on Monday and going into Tuesday. I mean, it's going to howl. And then, of course, now by Tuesday afternoon, this is all night, Monday night into Tuesday, the system is lingering off the coast, and the big high is coming in across I guess Memphis, very close to Memphis or the Missouri boot heel. But look at these winds in the Carolinas and Virginia, Maryland, Delaware, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York, and New England. Really going to howl here. Now finally, by Wednesday, now here the GFS diverges a little bit. The GFS develops this big ocean low off here, and you can still see it has pretty good winds along the coast. It's diminishing a bit in Virginia and Pennsylvania and Ohio. The winds are diminishing here. But then the system closes off. Look at that big, gigantic ocean storm off Cape Cod. You see that? Just lingering there. Very classic November big storm. Very classic. And you can see it's pulling in the north winds and the cold air. And the winds stay very strong across New England, all the way into, I guess, Pennsylvania, New Jersey. Not so much Virginia, North Carolina. The winds have died off a little bit. But that is Wednesday night into Thursday morning. So, and there's our next week front coming in. There's another big giant high coming down from Canada there in the Dakotas in the upper left for Thanksgiving Day. Now, Thanksgiving Day looks great. Now, this is the European model. Before we get to Thanksgiving, it does the same sort of thing, but the system is further off the coast. And again, look at the howling winds here up and down the East Coast from Maine to South Carolina on Tuesday. Now, by Tuesday evening, Wednesday morning, I should say, The system is pushed off the coast. Here's our upper low in the Gulf of Maine. You see that? You see the purple dot there right off the coast of Cape Cod? You see it right there where my arrow is? That's the upper low. That's the surface low there, and the upper low in the jet stream capturing it. So that system is lingering there. There's our block over Greenland. There's the monster block, negative NAO. And then here's our next system coming into California. And that's a very potent looking upper low there over Southern California, bringing a lot of rain and snow for the mountains for that area here on the day before Thanksgiving. Now, by after Thanksgiving, which looks very nice, the high builds in. As you can imagine, we can see that this high comes in here. This is for Wednesday and Thursday, so Thanksgiving looks great for the eastern half of the country. Now, however, like we said, now that southern system, let's talk about that second system. That's the one I'm more concerned about with. I'm a little more hopeful for, see, if you like snow, early season November snow in either New England or the Ohio Valley or maybe the mountains of the Mid-Atlantic. This one, the one for the Thanksgiving weekend, this one I've got more potential. This one I'm a little more concerned about. Let me tell you why. First, here's the GFS model for Saturday night. Now, there's our big high over Sault Ste. Marie, right in the center of the Great Lakes. Look at the big low here in New Brunswick in the upper right corner. See that low up here? Right here. See right here? Look at that low. Still pulling down cold air. You're still getting north winds, what we call cold air advection, pulling down the cold air from Quebec all the way down to Virginia and the Carolinas. And then you've got the southern system here. If this was December, January, February, March, a lot of people will be screaming snowstorm for the Mid-Atlantic if this map is right. A lot of people, including me. This is a pretty scary looking map. Now, the problem is the GFS kind of squashes it, which it always does when you get this far out in time. We're dealing 228 hours out. So the GFS is squashing the system. That's probably wrong, but it's a viable solution. We'll see. In any event, you can see the cold air here. These are the 850 temperatures. And you can see the 850 zero line, the 0 degree isotherm, that's the rain snow line 1 mile above the ground. That is on the Virginia North Carolina border. So at this time on Sunday, after Thanksgiving, if that precipitation is coming north, it would fall as snow north of the Virginia North Carolina border. Now, it may not come north, but the atmosphere is cold enough at that point to support it. If it comes north. Again, we don't know that. This is the European model for Thursday night, Friday. This is Thanksgiving night. So it also has the big ocean low on the Gulf of Maine. There you go, right there. And then there's our southern system in Texas. See that? And there's the big cold high coming down, 1036 millibars right there, north in Manitoba, north of North Dakota and Minnesota. And then the European, same sort of thing. Look at the similarities between these models. That's pretty damn close for 10 days out. That's pretty darn good. It's got a nice big low, Arkansas, the Delta region. And again, look at these howling north winds over New England, pulling down the cold air right through Thanksgiving weekend. Okay, evecting the cold air. Now, where does that low over Louisiana go? Now, it can't go northeast into Pennsylvania. It can't go up to Ohio. Why? Because the big low in New Brunswick is blocking it. That's why having a big ocean low, a big upper low in the atmosphere over southeastern Canada is always a prerequisite for an East Coast snowstorm, because it forces the southern systems to stay to the south. So you're on the north side and you stay in the cold air and you get your winter precipitation. This system, it may miss everybody, but it's not going to Ohio and it's not going to Michigan. That's not happening. Not in that upper air pattern, not in that surface pattern. We can see it right here. Here's the upper air map for Thursday night, Friday morning after Thanksgiving. There's the upper low in the Gulf of Maine. Right there, you see it. Okay, there's the block. And then here is the upper low in Baja in northern Mexico. Now, what happens to the upper low? The European has a problem with southern stream systems. It usually is too slow with them. That may be the case here. But by day 9, you can see there it is in Texas. Look at the huge upper low in New England. Look at that system. It's just a monster block there. And then you have the huge blocking pattern to the north. So this system over Texas has to stay to the south. Now, eventually, the upper low in the Gulf of New England, the Gulf of Maine, is going to move away towards Nova Scotia. And that will allow the southern system come a little further north. And we can see that here. Here's the European ensemble for Saturday, November 27th. So This is the operational run. You see where the operational run has the low? See the green over Texas, Rio Grande? See that? Now look at this. Next slide. Very different. The European ensemble is more progressive with the system, a little faster. So that makes sense. I agree with that solution. Here is the European at 240 hours. The upper low, which was in southern Texas, is now in Arkansas. And again, this is a snow looking map. This is for Sunday, except again, I think this is too slow. Now, if we look at the European ensemble, we can see that there is some sort of feature in the southern jet stream right here on Friday. And then the GFS has the same sort of thing. There's some sort of inverted trough right over the Gulf Coast states here on Friday night. And then you can see it a little bit on Saturday. So again, this has got possibilities for some sort of winter weather precipitation, mostly in the mountains for the mid-Atlantic. I'm not that worried about, I-95, but it's still a ways out, we'll see. And then if we go beyond that, this is the GFS for 216 hours. Now this is the 12Z run. And what happens here is that there's the southern low over Texas, but notice the ridge on the west coast gets destroyed because the upper low in the Gulf of Alaska drives in very quickly. So it destroys the ridge on the west coast, which cuts off the cold air. But the GFS ensemble at 12Z is a little different. It has, notice it's got a much bigger trough here. Compare that to this. See the difference? Ensemble, operational. Ensemble, operational. So it's very different, and the ensemble also has more ridging on the west coast. You see that? So it's colder, and it's a bigger system. And then the GFS ensemble at 18Z on Thursday afternoon and evening has it also very strong, with a stronger ridge on the west coast and more cold air. So the GFS is pretty bullish with the system 18Z. All right, looking further out in time, here's the European the new one just came out this evening, Extended European, the weekly, the MJO. So let's call this up a little bit. Notice what it does here. Once we get into the middle of December, it does go strongly into phase 7. For mid-December, you see that. Very clear. Now, I don't know if it's going to go into phase 8 or if it's going to circulate back in 7 or back in neutral circle. But through the middle of December, it goes into phase 7. And if we, the next one is the Australians, and those two models, the European extended and Australians are the extended, are the best MJO models out there right now. So those are the ones you should always use. And you can see it too. Look at the similarities. Phase 7, phase 7. European, Australian. Okay, well, what does that mean? What does it mean in the middle of December, early December, for the MJO to go into phase 7? Well, this is what it typically means when you have neutral conditions for the El Nino. Now, we are in La Nina. It's a weak one, but this is the general idea. You can see there's very strong blocking in Greenland, but there is also a strong negative anomaly in Alaska. So as a result, you don't have any strong ridges or troughs across the U.S. It's a very mixed pattern. There's a little ridging here, a little troughing there. It's a very mixed pattern. It's not warm. It's not super cold. It's very ordinary for early and mid-December. If we look at the bias, we can see that, in November, it's a pretty warm bias. But if we look at December, I don't think I have the December maps posted here. I should. The December map is much colder here. It is much cold in December. So keep that in mind. Now, it's still fairly dry east of the Mississippi River, but that is an important feature. Now, to go further out in time here, also, this here is the European ensemble, for the 200 millibar potential anomalies, and you can see at the velocity potential anomalies. Notice here in November 26th, December 10th. So you see the strong orange here at the top of this. You go down, look where that is. That's in the eastern Pacific Ocean. We have a bit of a trough here. See the green around 60, 65 longitude. But when you get into the middle of December, this strong ridge breaks down. You see that? So it becomes very narrow, mostly white here. So that means you're not getting a ridging on the west coast. So it's a kind of a oblat pattern, kind of Pacific jet pattern, very typical La Nina. Then when we get towards the end of December, the ridge comes back on the west coast, pretty strong. So the pattern might turn dramatically colder after, let's say, December 15th or December 20th again. And the GFS ensemble does the same. Let me see if I can shrink this at all. No, I can't. The GFS ensemble does the same sort of thing. Notice, see the strong orange color here on November 26th to December 10th, covering from the date line 180 degrees longitude out to about 120, which is the west coast of North America. That's good. That's your ridging. That's cold. Then it breaks down here. See this? See how it breaks down? After December 6th or 7th, which is when if you look at the extended European, the extended GFS, the Pacific jet comes roaring and the West Coast ridge is destroyed, and the pattern turns mild again, or for December, mild in the second half or the middle of December. And again, that matches the European, but the European has the ridging coming back after December 20th, so there is some difference between the two. Okay, and then we go further out in time here. Here's the GFS for November 30th. You can see we still have the trough on the west coast. Very strong blocking here in Greenland into Hudson's Bay, Canada, and a moderate ridge on the west coast. So this is still a fairly cold pattern. Notice the big upper low, though, in Alaska. See that? Now, if that low wasn't there, that you always get this in La Nina. You get that big upper low. If that low wasn't there, this ridge would be all extending up into the North Pole, and we'd be getting brutal cold. But we're not getting that. We're getting some cold, just not extreme stuff. And finally, this is from the folks at the World Climate Service. And what they did was they looked at the average December, February height anomalies based upon the sea surface temperatures in September and October for the winter, December, January, February. And based upon what we have just seen in September and October of 2021. And notice the winters here. The winter of 1970, 63, 64, 55, 56, 1920, 88, 89, 99, 2000, 2016, 17, 61, 62, 95, 96, and 54, 55. These are all pretty significant, not all of them, some of them are very significant winters. 56, 57, 64, 65, 62, 63, 95, 96, 54, 55. A lot of these are pretty significant winters. Not all of them, but a lot of them are. And you can see that it does support a strong negative NAO in Greenland. Now, the problem is that the mean trough here on this pattern is actually in central Canada. So it's kind of mixed. It's not overwhelmingly great, but it's not horrible. So I just wanted to point that out to you. Thank you to the World Climate folks, World Climate Service, for producing this great graphic, which I found on Twitter. And I just want to give them credit because it is their product. They produce some really, really great stuff. And finally, this here is the GFS extended. And remember, we talked about it in December. The pattern's going to break down. And look what it's doing here. It crashes the entire west coast. Now, the block still remains here. If this block wasn't here, we would have a blowtorch. You have a big trough here and a big ridge on the east coast. So you don't have that. So you're going to have these systems moving across the country. And some places will get snow out of this kind of pattern. It's too early for the mid-Atlantic and for the Central Plains, but the upper plains, the Great Lakes, and New England can get snowstorms out of this kind of weather pattern. All right, that's the presentation. Hopefully you enjoyed this week in weather. We'll do another one next Wednesday. This is meteorologist DT from Weather Risk. I will see you over on the Twitter page and on the website, and hopefully if I get my Facebook page back up and running, on the Facebook page.